I do it for the culture. I do it for the people. I do it for the love of it. I do it for the culture. I do it for the people. I do it for the love of it. My people build pyramids of light and the filament. Our light is heaven sent. That's right, we intelligent. Better tell the president the culture at his residence.
What's going on? This is the Culture Podcast. TC's drinking water. We're staying hydrated. And we have a guest here with us because this is Black Principal, right?
That's the
It's
name
not,
of
it's
it.
like not P-O-E. This is the name
No,
of the
it's
episode.
P-A-L.
It's P-A-L, but Principal is like rules and shit.
Yeah.
Yep. Welcome, Dr.
Ariel.
Ariel, hey.
Ooh. Ariel, hey.
Thank you for having me.
Hayes.
Yes.
H-E-H-A-E-H-A-Y-E-S.
Yes, thank you.
Can
I'm
you
not a
spell-
doctor yet, but it's coming.
It's on it.
I'm
But can
working
you
on
spell your last name for us?
it. Hayes.
Told you.
Yes.
Not
Yeah,
E.
not the Haze.
And what's your social security number?
I know. I'm not giving those last four.
And also, can you please? I'm not sure if I should say this, because I like to keep my personal life personal. And also, can you please turn off all alarms and cell phones?
Funny thing, I do want to share this with your guests, is that was an alarm for my water because I want to stay hydrated too. So I really do apologize for my water alarm.
And I opened the show telling people that we're staying hydrated.
Yeah, 'cause
Right.
You have to.
Because
I'm up to a gallon a
The
day. so I have
synergy
to
is
time it
real.
just to make sure.
Listen.
I had a calendar alarm for this podcast.
Excellent.
A recording session time, 3 p.m. every
Sunday. It's Saturday.
Well, this one was for today, though.
Well, I'm glad.
Well, I don't know what this 3 o'clock alarm was for.
But basically, everybody, what we're trying to tell you is to keep your alarms going because sometimes we need alarms. And this is the Culture Podcast.
Right, but while you're listening to this podcast,
Drink
turn
some water.
all
Turn
your
the
shit off.
And drink your water.
And drink your
And
water
drink
while
water.
listening to this.
And
It can
sit down, listen, and drink your
and
water.
drink your water. So, boom. I'm so glad to have you here. Just really quick. I'm not glad only because you're my sister. But I'm glad because you're a professional, a doctor, and you're my sister.
Right.
I love
Let's
that you
clap
keep
it up.
putting that prophecy out there, but I'm not a doctor.
But I am.
You are.
I attended Life
But
University.
Principal
You did.
Ariel, didn't you just say you have to speak it?
You do, but I
Right.
don't want it to be misconstrued that I am saying I'm a doctor.
Well,
and I'm
But you
not.
just did surgery on me
I know,
yesterday.
right? I
My
know.
boobs look
I
great.
know.
They do look really good. Sister.
Hi.
Ariel Hayes.
Hi, baby
It's-
sister.
Hi, because I miss that.
Yeah, that's my baby sister.
I'm
Mhm.
really glad to have you here. Me and T.
Thank you.
CZ, we're happy because you are our first interview for season 2.5.
Excellent. Thank you for
So,
having me.
We're doing a segment like we've done creating creations. We're exploring the minds and talents of, independent Black artists. Now we're doing like a professionally black
A block of black professionals
on the Culture Podcast, and you're our first professional.
You're
I
the
like
first
it.
brick in the block. of
You're the
block.
first brick in the block.
That's dope.
That's bars.
That's dope.
Yeah,
I can think of a rap song right now.
do it.
So what's going on? Can you tell us a little bit about who you are as a professional? Like, what's your background? Where did you go to school and things like that?
Yes. So I am a graduate of Coloma High School from CMSD, Cleveland Metropolitan School District. I came out in 2000. After leaving there, I went to University of Toledo, where I was a double major for education as well as mathematics, which I was super excited. So graduated from there in 2004, came back to the Cleveland area, and at the time, Cleveland was not hiring for teachers. It was right around that massive layoff that took place. So I started off in a charter school, ended up working in primarily Euclid City Schools, which is right outside of Cleveland. It's an inner ring suburb.
Okay.
I taught math for 5 years. During that time of teaching, I got my master's degree in administration. And after 5 years of teaching math, I became an assistant principal. for 5 years, and I am currently in my 5th year as head principal in a Cleveland elementary school.
Wow.
So
that's
15
dope.
years in. This is my 15th year.
Clapping it up. I know you guys are clapping too. I'm just super proud. You know, I just get really proud. So what, you said you went to Toledo.
Yes, University of Toledo. Go Rockets.
Go Rockets. Have you always wanted to be a teacher? Like when you were a little kid, I want to be a principal. Was that always that thing, or how becoming an educator? How did that come about?
So I would say when I was in 8th grade, I went to Wilbur Wright in Cleveland, and there were multiple, at the time, different trades and programs that were available. And so one of them was thematics, the thematics program at Coloma High School. And so because of that, it was a program about teaching. Got into that program, and we had a cohort, had an opportunity to learn what it meant to be a teacher. I actually had a chance to student teach while I was in the program,
Wow.
still in high school. So that led to that. But I had some really great teachers. My sixth grade teacher was the one that really showed me, like, you are pretty bright. And then from there, I ended up in the honors program and had some really great teachers in high school, and just saw how they were making a difference for us. And I knew the education was the key to success. And so I had to go to college, and to see black women that were leading that charge and being role models for that, it was something I felt like I could do and make a difference.
Representation matters.
Definitely.
Can people just get hired on as a principal? Or do they have, like, can they just go to college, get their master's, and then start as a principal? Or do you have to, like, go through teaching first?
So,
I don't know if that's a dumb question.
No, it's not
not at
because
all.
I want to be a judge, but I don't want to be a lawyer, but you have to be a lawyer first. So,
So no, it's definitely not a silly question at all. So when I went to school, I was under the impression that you had to be a teacher before you could become a principal. But there is a level of education that you need in order to segue into that role.
Okay.
Initially, I was told that it would take 3 years of teaching before I could become an administrator. And so that was a part of what I knew. But there are alternative ways now. If you have a degree and you go into a district and they're willing to help you get an alternative license, there are other avenues to become administrators now that weren't there. Just like becoming a teacher. You don't have to go to college to become a teacher. If you want to go that direction, there are other pathways that you can take in order to do that.
Sounds like
you need a
becoming
bachelor's
president.
degree
Expand
in order
on
to
that.
do.
As far as, like, you said, you don't have to go to college to become a
So say you go to school and get a 4-year degree,
Mhm.
and decide in the process you want to become a substitute teacher, and within that time you find that you love this field and you want to do more with the field. There are alternative pathways in order to get into the field. So you can start off as a substitute teacher. There are tests that you can take in order to get endorsed and certified. You can go back and get your master's degree in a field within education. So special education, general education, a particular content or contents. So there are other ways. But say, for instance, you go to undergrad and that's not what you think you want to do. Or in some cases, people think it's not going to give them the money they want, so they're going to go a different direction for money, and then later decide, you know, I really want to pursue education because that's what I'm into. That's my passion.
For the children.
For the and that's really good that you said that. As far as, like, people do it for the money.
Is there
just some quick facts? No, go ahead. No, just some quick facts. 80% of teachers are white, and 77% of teachers are white females. So I guess my question would be to you is
shout out to the children.
Shout out to the children, because granted we are businesswomen and women, and we are professionals. We also have little people that depend on us, and they call us mommy.
They came out of our bodies,
and they're actually here in the studio with us. So if you hear little voices, that's because we're gonna we're teaching them. That's I think that's yours.
She's gonna be famous too.
Yeah, she is. So my question will be to you: why do you think, being, you know, that's not a little percentage, you know, as far as, like, you know, the career of teaching, what are your thoughts? Like, why do you think there are not more black people? I'm not going to say women, but black male or female who are not in, you know, the education, you know, sector of being a professional. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
So I think it's clearly a lot of different reasons. I think primarily a lot of people go to college and have a misconception of how much money they're going to make when you actually graduate. everybody assumes you're going to make a lot of money with any degree as soon as you come out. And that's generally not the case. There are a lot of fields that you don't just come out making $50,000 and $60,000. It doesn't happen that way. So I think being able to sustain your family and financially wanting to be in a good position, people don't go into the field. That is one of the things I would say.
Right.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah. So, and in the news recently, actually right now, 3 states teachers unions went on strike. The kids weren't able to start school on time because they're protesting against their salaries.
Yeah.
They feel like they're being taken advantage of. They're not getting paid well. They have to have second and third jobs in order to survive.
I saw that study, all of the reports. And that is the case. So that's one part of it.
Oh my God.
The other part of it though is I think that when you get into the field of education, you're not just teaching content.
Okay.
And most people get in thinking I'm passionate about teaching. In my case, I was passionate about teaching math, or I'm passionate about teaching English. But that's not all that you have to do. Being in the field of education is not just teaching content. And so there are behaviors that could potentially arise within your classroom that you have to figure out how to work within that, how to support your scholars. And so you can get them to be engaged in lessons. And you have to be prepared to do that and have the growth mindset to know that every day is not going to be a perfect day. These are not your birth children, but how do you make sure you can help them have a good classroom that's going to be able to help you, make sure they can learn. So I think education is really stressful. People don't believe that. It's not a daycare facility. And so there are a lot of factors that you really have to say, I want to do this work, and really want to put in all that you have to do it in order to make sure you can help kids be successful, because it's not easy.
Yeah. And with that, did you go through any behavioral education class or some how to provide emotional support? Did you ever go through any of those, like going through school? Because getting prepared to be a teacher, clearly, like you said, is more than just teaching content. Did your college, or did you ever go through any special trainings to deal with that?
In undergrad, I took one class on special education. That was my field, right? So you scratched the surface of what it meant to deal with behaviors or emotional concerns, and you dealt with that in small segments within undergrad, for instance. And then even at the graduate level, it was about maintaining an entire school. So you're dealing with the teacher side of it, the legal side of it, evaluations. Like, you're dealing with a lot of different pieces and parts of it. You do have field experiences as well as a student teaching experience, and I had internships once I got to the graduate level. But really and truly, you don't know until you're in there. Like, you can read every textbook, take every test the way you think they want you to test, and still not know it until you're in it. Like, you have to be in the world of education in order to fully understand and embrace what it is that's required of you. So you have some wherewithal, but I don't think anyone is perfectly prepared in order to deal with some of the issues and concerns you'll deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, because everyone will deal with them differently. So it sounds like it takes just time and experience and developing your own process and developing your own mindset to be able to appropriately handle the different issues that come up, socially, behaviorally with the kids.
Because it's a lot. I mean, you figure most classes, right now my school is pretty small, which is concerning, because if you're too small, then that could potentially lead to closure. So that's a big deal. But even when I started, and this is my 5th year in the same school, my teachers had anywhere from 38 kids and down. That's a lot of different personalities in one classroom setting.
Wait, 38 kids in one class?
In one class. That's not the case currently, but
There's
there
not
are
even
schools.
38 people in my department at work.
And so just imagine
that's
38
crazy.
children in elementary school that are trying to figure out like who they are as people. And if you didn't get enough rest, if you didn't eat well enough, if you haven't seen mom or dad, if you got a headache or two, like all these different things that we don't think about. And they're like, if your lesson was engaging, it would be okay. The benefit for me and in my life is realizing like real life happens, and how do I make sure I provide enough support to my teachers. That's something that's really important to me, because I see the nuances that we deal with every single day, and I understand that life is not perfect, and just how can we help? You know, like how can we as a collective help the teacher as well as the students? And clearly the students come first, but if a teacher is stressed out, then how are they going to be able to help the children that they serve every day? So it's a lot of dynamics to go into it that you have to take into consideration every day, because every day is a new day.
Yes.
And that's a key part in being effective, I believe.
So you've talked a lot about how a teacher in the classroom, you know, how it's challenging to be able to teach the content and also kind of nurture the children. What is in that capacity as a principal, how does that play out for you? You're not in the classroom per se, but as, you know, the head administrator of the building, like how does that affect you? How do you come to that responsibility?
So for me, the biggest part of my role is to provide support. I am the only administrator in my building, and so that takes on.
When you say only administrator, you mean like no assistant or anything like that?
I don't have an assistant principal.
Okay.
I have a dean.
Okay.
Shout out to Dean Cloud. Then I have a wraparound coordinator. I have other roles that support me within that, but there is only one person that evaluates teachers. So a big part of it is knowing what are the procedures for that process, but then also like how do I make sure you buy into what you need to do as a professional on my staff. So a lot of it is me showing empathy in your professional life and in your personal life, because I want you to know I care about you as an individual. That's important to me, right, as a professional. So that care goes both ways. If your child, like a child in your class is having a rough day and you need some support there, then let's figure that out. Teachers do need procedures and routines in place. But if you have those in place and somebody is just really having an off day, one of your scholars is, then how can we step in and intervene? And a part of that is empowering teachers to understand it starts and stops with them, because if a principal or an administrator of any sort comes in all the time to pull kids out, it takes away their authority. So that's not my goal, to go into your classroom and do that for you. But if you need support, how can we support you or provide whatever professional development to help you with that? Because the goal is to keep kids in the classroom. That's where the education takes place. The other thing, though, is me really helping my staff pursue whatever their dreams may be. Some of my teachers want to become administrators and want to get into other roles. So how can I support you with that? Because I've had one teacher in particular who wanted to become an administrator. She did her internship under me. Like, how do I provide you with enough supports and enough experiences so when it's time for you to go out and interview, like, you feel like you're well-rounded and ready to take that on? So a lot of it is about care. A lot of it is about buy-in. If you have a good idea, let's work with it. Let me be a thought partner with you around it. And then let me support your dreams. Those are the things that I believe I do within my school. I do a lot of management things. That can be scheduling. That can be a parent has an issue. That can be stuff with the cleanings. That, you know, just so many different things that I deal with and touch every single day.
You're like the manager,
of
the
school.
But you
General
are the
manager.
manager. But what's interesting is when I went to get my degree, that was what I was taught, the manager side of it.
Yes.
And education for us now as administrators has really moved more into an instructional leader. So although I feel good with those manager pieces, I am learning as I continue to be in this role, I'm supposed to be in classrooms that much more. And it's a juggling act to fit that in when anything could be happening. 2 teachers didn't come today. Where are their kids going to go for the day? There's a parent that's having an issue. There's some other big thing that has to be done. So it's about prioritizing time and figuring out how to get it all done within the school day.
This is really interesting.
No, I'm like quiet because I'm just so intrigued.
How do you feel? Okay, so another interesting thing about you is that you are a principal of the school that you actually went to. Is that true?
So I didn't go there, but we lived around the corner from there. Yeah, that's okay. She's 8 years younger than me, so she doesn't know a lot about what happened all those years ago. But it is a big to-do that you say that. My school is probably 3 streets away from where I did grow up. And so when people look at you and they assume that you came from the suburbs, And they think because you know you carry yourself a certain way that you don't understand what they are going through or what they've been through. I tell my story. So we live
the children or the
to the children.
teachers?
I tell them my age. I tell the parents. I talk about, not in depth, or it depends on the situation or scenario, but I tell enough so they understand I am connected to the work that I'm doing.
Right.
And basically, you can be where I am.
Yeah,
You,
and
I
I want
come
you
from
to,
the
I want you
same
to
area.
see where I am. Right, like.
Right.
This was all a dream. And so I've heard it throughout the years, people joke and say, I'm living the dream. But in my real life, like I am
Literally
living
living
my
the
actual dream.
Right.
So that to me is like one of the dopest things that I've had to experience, because you hope that you get there. You hope that you get to some place, but it's like it's really happening. So I feel good about that.
And that's real because, like TC was saying, and it's not necessarily a great area. It's somewhat of a rough area, but you were saying that you worked out in Euclid. And to those of you who are not, familiar with what Euclid is a better area, a less urban area.
Well, it's a suburb. Of
It's
Cleveland.
a suburb. It's a suburb of Cleveland. So that's where you were. What made you? Were you always planning to return
to the
or
hood?
you're
Wait,
like,
is it a hood school?
Yeah, it is.
It
Definitely.
is.
Definitely.
Is it?
The funny thing, even with it being considered like a hood school, which is where I'm from, so it's no disrespect or slight.
No.
That's where I'm from.
Just a characterization.
And I think the thing that's cool about it, on top of being in the area that it's in, my building is old, like 1920s old.
AF.
Antique. My son loves
Not
antiques.
antique.
Girl.
So it was one of those things. I was ready to transition into a principal role. It's so funny when you get so far in certain roles in your career. I remember people asking me like, so when are you going to become a real principal?
Oh my
Excuse me,
God.
What's that
I
mean?
have a license to do this. I'm doing the work I'm
That's
supposed
crazy.
to do.
People are
But
just
I will tell you,
shitty.
but I will tell you,
All those Nickies out there.
yeah. But the nice part about being an assistant, it prepared me because I think that all great leaders truly do know how to follow. And I really learned how to follow and support someone else's mission before I stepped into that role
When
for
you were an
myself.
assistant.
And so when it was time and I was actually ready, which is funny because my son, at the time I had 3 kids, my son wasn't even 1 yet. I was like, the only place I'm applying is Cleveland. And I remember praying about it. And we have a disabled daughter, our second child. And I remember my husband saying, like, are you sure you don't want to wait till she gets better? And I was like, I don't know if she'll ever get better. But this was something I was strongly feeling and wanted to pursue principalship as a head principal. And I applied in Cleveland. And funny thing, I was a middle school and high school, math teacher. And so I got my superintendent's license when I was pregnant with my second daughter. And that afforded me the opportunity to work in an elementary. I didn't work in elementary before. It was all new. So I knew I wanted to come
Where
back to
were
Cleveland.
you working before?
I was a
What
middle
level?
school,
Middle school,
assistant principal. And so I had experience coming to Cleveland. Cleveland is K-8. So I knew the middle school side, and I loved middle school. And I fell in love with middle school over time. But I wanted to see the elementary side because I had little children of my own. And I wanted to understand what it was like to have school-age children in an elementary setting, and then how could I bring that home, and vice versa. Like, how could I do that? And I wanted to be
so it was real
well-rounded.
personal for you. This is
Definitely.
I'm loving this. So this is really you making that decision to go to an elementary school in Cleveland in the hood was really a personal
Definitely.
connect. That's dope because
Definitely.
somebody can look, on the outside, but she was at a nice school. They had AC, they had this, that, and the third. They was given.
They had
you
books.
know, right? Exactly.
I think a big part of it too is when I came to Cleveland, I wasn't making a raise by coming.
Right.
Right. So most people are motivated by money.
Right.
I like money. Don't get me wrong. I plan on being rich very soon. So I don't know how this
Brady,
will
Brady,
happen, but it's
Brady,
gonna
Brady,
happen, right?
Brady.
But when I came, I needed the experience. I needed to come back to home because it felt like coming home. And I remember saying that in my interview. I was coming home on the educational side. And for me, like I live and work. I was living and working in the same city. I was a mile away from my home. Right.
Yes,
I'm not a commuter.
That is a fact.
Right.
That
So
is a
to
fact.
be able to get to work so quick, and now I'm transitioning to somewhere that's not far from home, but it wasn't right down the
It
street.
wasn't 3
Exactly.
minutes,
Right.
Right.
There were things that I made choices to do because I wasn't motivated by the money. I was motivated by the experience. And I always tell people, if you're doing something you genuinely love and care about, the money will come. But you got to do it because you genuinely want to do it. I wanted to make a difference, and I wanted to make a difference from where I came from. And so I said, I'm going back home, and so that's what happened. I had to interview to get the school. And
if you're doing something, I'm just to quote, if you're doing something you love,
the money will come.
The money will come.
The money will come.
Because I know somebody that was doing something, and they are, trying to think about quitting their job to do something that they really love, and they ended up taking a leave of absence. And I'm like, listen, stay encouraged because you are good at what you do, and you're gonna do it. And they were approved for their leave of absence to do a side job so they can do what they really love.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's dope.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That is.
The money will come. I'm just saying the money will come. I believe that firmly, but understood the importance of the work I was doing. And don't get me wrong, like there have been challenges with going for me, especially going from a middle school to elementary. It was a whole new world. I was like, what is happening here? I'm
Is it louder?
Things.
Well,
look,
it's just it was the
louder?
level. I'm a nurturer in general, but I had to become that much more comfortable with nurturing my babies at school because like I believe in hugs and my babies hug me and I hug on them, so it was different things that I had to see. How could I show them my care and concern and love for them, and how can I encourage them that much more to go into that classroom and do their best? So it has definitely allowed me to grow as a professional, as a person, as a mom, just so many parts of this that have infused all together, so to speak.
And I guess jumping back to what I was asking earlier about that training or those classes as far as like emotional support for the teachers, and how can they take care of themselves emotionally and also provide that much more. I think something like that should be implemented. Even if you're like a teacher now, it should be like something that's in a professional development situation. Just because I've seen so many videos of these teachers, they get overwhelmed and they start cursing at the kids, calling the kids the N-word or hitting the kids. Or like those
absolutely.
things. I feel like that should be implemented on an ongoing thing as a source of support, as a source of education, informing you, hey, some of these kids are different, or these, that, and the third. Some of these kids have issues that have not been diagnosed. So you're dealing with potentially special needs children in a regular setting class. I just think.
Well, I want to stop you there too, because even when children do have special needs, the goal is, by law, technically, is to make sure every scholar is in the least restrictive environment.
Right.
So there are always going to be children that have an IEP that will be in a general education setting, right? So we do have to be mindful of how to support children across the board. I agree with you, and I'm glad you brought up self-care. I think self-care is so important in general, and that comes in a professional setting, but that is something that you have to inherently want to tap into as well.
Yes.
Because I think sometimes, like in Cleveland, we are big on social emotional learning, as well as if someone is having some sort of issue as a professional, we have a program that can support you with that too. A big part of it, though, is sometimes people don't think they're having an issue. So you have to be self-aware in order to even recognize, like, I am feeling overwhelmed. I am stressed out. I do need some time for myself. So you should all of us should constantly be talking to someone we trust.
Right, professional or not, but that's real.
But figure out, like, how am I feeling right now? Because sometimes people are stressed out but don't acknowledge it. And they hit that breaking point at the wrong time, and take it out on the wrong person. So I think it's something that in any profession that you should constantly be aware of, like, how am I feeling today? Do I have a lot of work that has me bogged down? Are there other things I should be doing in order to make sure I'm okay? But you have to be self-aware in order to see that. Because I can tell you all day long you have a problem, and it doesn't matter who it is, and you be like, I don't have a problem.
I'm cool. I'm good.
I'm fine.
Right. But I see you
banging
your head on this brick outside every morning.
I see it.
And you have a big gash. No, I'm cool. That's just a scratch.
Hey,
I see you holstering your firearm.
Yes.
As you exit your vehicle.
And it doesn't make you weak. And I think that's a big part of it.
I feel like it makes you stronger.
It makes you so much stronger when you can say, like, I need time for myself to, like,
I'm not
recoup.
feeling okay, right.
And if you if you're unaware or if you don't take that time, I think it just makes it exacerbates because you don't realize when you need that stop moment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's real.
Now, what are your thoughts on the school shootings?
So interesting topic. When I was in 11th grade, 12th grade, is
50
when
years
those.
ago?
I know, right?
Yeah.
It feels that way. So like 1999, when those school shootings took place, and I was in 11th grade.
Columbine. Yes,
Columbine.
that was the biggest one.
And that was when things shifted right before I went to college.
Wow,
and so you go into this work, because I went straight to school in 2000, you go into this work knowing that it's a possibility that it can happen, even the location of my school, knowing that something can happen,
Wow.
but
Never
deciding that the work I need to do was greater than the fear I could potentially have.
Mm.
True.
So in Cleveland, we have metal detectors in schools, and people say, why do you need them? Well, if that's one more safeguard that's there, it doesn't criminalize my kids, it doesn't criminalize my families, it does none of that, but it does say, hey, like, if you're coming in this space, don't come in here, because
we're going to know that you
we
have something.
would know
that you
right
don't
away.
Don't
bring any firearms or weapons.
medals.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
They
I
will be detected.
I don't worry about that at all,
Mhm.
because again, because I'm connected to the work and I lived in that same area, I'm glad that people showed up for me every single day.
Right.
Right? Like, educators helped me decide that this was the work I wanted to do. So that's not something I stress about every single day. It's a real thing.
It's
Clearly,
real.
it's
It's
happening
real.
across this nation. And unfortunately, people are taking lives, and you don't get those lives back.
Yeah.
But the goal is to just do your best work every single day and make sure in our district, one of the big things is customer service. And I believe in customer service even when I go to the store.
Target, what's up?
Absolutely.
Yes. And
Treat
so
me nice.
You want to go places where people
AT&T,
treat you
get
well.
on your job.
And we're not perfect at it, but that is something that's critical to making sure families feel welcome.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something we push every day.
Now, what are your thoughts also on teacher salary?
So I really don't have a hard stance on it, because I believe if you're in the field for a certain amount of time, you're gonna continue to make money over time. It saddens me when I hear about stories of people having to get multiple jobs in different states. Thankfully, you don't hear that as much in this area. Not that it's not
in those
happening.
states were like Oklahoma, Washington, Texas.
Like D.C.?
They marched in D.C. They protested in D.C.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think it's unfortunate. I think that it would be great to have higher salaries. I think that
These are educators. I don't understand, not to go off on a rant, but I don't understand why why is it like that? Not trying to not trying to down any other profession, like basketball players, football players, there's entertainers, which is great. These are they're
people
teaching our
who are
babies.
raising the
I
future.
just don't understand why can't they be compensated, overly compensated. They have to deal. We just went over emotional, content, educational, social, environmental.
Self-care.
Oh my God, it's so much that
How
a
can
teacher
you
has to
take
endure.
care of yourself when you have to work 3 jobs?
I
And
can't
then
even
go into the
fathom
classroom. That.
Right, I can't fathom. So the reason I say I don't have a hard press, I haven't done any research of my own in a long time about it. But I do feel like it's such a great profession. It's so rewarding.
It is.
And it would be great if people could actually make a wage that they feel comfortable with and be able to sustain their own lives. So I want things to change. I just don't have a method as to how that's supposed to take place.
You mean you don't have the answer?
I do not. And I'm
Principal?
open to not knowing everything.
really quick, TC, do you know what say they don't answer the protesters or whatever you call it, or they'll say, okay, yes, we're gonna raise it. How does that process, how do they make that? Do you know how they make that decision?
Well, the striking was done through the unions, the teachers' unions.
Okay.
So I'm not sure exactly, but the way unions work, my understanding is they have to negotiate with the school board.
Yes.
If there are going to be any type of changes with anything regarding benefits, salaries, anything like that. So
for their collective bargaining
Yeah.
agreement. That's how the decisions are made.
Then that's
But
something
what
else.
happens is that when you don't have qualified educators in the classroom, those that have whatever certificate or have done the correct testing or whatever that looks like in the classroom, then you have people in front of your children that, although they care or really want to do good work, aren't the most qualified individuals to teach your kids.
Right, which leads to low test scores, which
Yeah.
leads to less money being infused into the districts, less tax dollars. People are like, I'm not paying for, and then there are,
Because that comes through the levies.
Right.
In case people are not familiar with how does that work. But people have to vote. In
go
your
ahead and explain
city.
that, because the elections are coming up, lots of levies on the ballots in different areas.
On voting, yep.
Yeah, so you have to first of all be aware, and I know that's not easy with our busy lives, but you have to be aware of what are these issues. They typically will come up. It'll be either a bond issue, which can be for actual buildings. It could be a levy that's dealing strictly with salaries. It could be a levy just for money for the district, all the way around. And
people get confused. They think if they vote yes for something to do with the schools, their taxes are going to go up, and that's not always the case.
That's
And
not
most of the
always
time,
the
it's not the
that
case.
I've heard
And then if you have a levy that's dropping off, like say the levy was for a certain number of years, and this is just replacing that levy, that's why they can say it's not going to increase your taxes. That's where that comes from. But the truth of the matter is, as a homeowner in a school district, you want your schools to do well so you can bring more
Exactly.
families to your district. If the schools aren't where you want them to be, how do you entice people to come and live in your community?
Right.
So that's a big part of it too. As a homeowner, I want my property value to be high.
Right.
And so you want to have a good school system, or keep working toward being an even better school system, because it's not an overnight process, although we wish it could be, but it just isn't. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Sure.
So basically, from that, vote. Definitely vote in whatever area you live in, and educate yourselves. Be aware. Just go to a town hall
online.
meeting.
Yeah, go to school board meeting, city
I
council.
want us to get back to being an open community, like being okay with saying hello to Miss Jackson or saying hello to Miss Paula, and talking. Hey, my son, I'm getting off late from work. Can you watch him as he walks home? Or just that community vibe of knowing what's going on with the school system, knowing what's going on with the building,
Right.
knowing what's going on in your community. I just feel like we've gotten away from that.
Yeah, people are in their own bubbles these days and times.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to ask you also, being an educator in the same neighborhood that you grew up in, how do you feel that the demographics or the dynamics amongst the students, amongst the families in the area, has that changed at all? I know you were a student yourself
Right, you
back
were
then,
right.
but do you feel like anything is different in that arena?
So I would say when I lived in the community I work in now, busing was a big to do. And so the school I mentioned earlier was Wilbur Wright. I was actually bused to Wilbur Wright from the area. So I was bused from the east side of Cleveland to the west side. So I didn't go to that neighborhood school. So one year I went to the school that was in the community, Empire, which has now closed. And then the following year I went to schools that weren't directly right in the neighborhood where I was at. So I don't think the demographic has changed. What has changed, though, are the options that are available. And so there are multiple charter schools right around my school, which when I first got there, it didn't seem to make a difference in the number of scholars that I had. But over time, families have choice, and so they can choose to go wherever. So I have families that choose to go to a charter school, but then I also have families that move. We have a huge transience in our neighborhood, so a lot of families move in and out, which doesn't help stabilize the children that are there. So going back to what you said, that sense of community, a lot of our families, like these days and times, don't stay where they stayed for a long period of time.
Right.
So that impacts a lot of different things. You don't get that sense of community when you're moving a lot.
That's true.
How do you develop trust with the neighbor, or is the neighbor trying to help me? Is she trying to hurt me, or what's happening? So that transience plays a huge part in what happens on a day-to-day basis for a lot of our families. I have some kids that have been there since kindergarten. They go all the way through, but overwhelmingly, that's not what I see in the school. And like I said, this is my 5th year there, so I have a handful of kids that have been there from the time I started up until now. But a lot of my kids are newer kids, so I think that plays a huge role when people don't stay in the same space for a length of time.
But then that makes it even more important for the staff at the school to be strong, welcoming in new students all the time. You have to, have that energy about you to where, hey, we're here to help you. We love you.
Definitely.
Not like, oh my God.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Definitely.
Why new kids? Oh my God, I gotta change up. I gotta learn new things, new people.
Like customer service in a way.
Yeah, customer service.
Invite us.
Yeah,
make us feel welcome.
Be a happy meal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, they're definitely not real, but they do make you happy.
Yeah.
So can you?
Here comes a child.
Hi.
No, here comes hey little baby.
In the studio.
With a shirt on that says "How to Be Happy."
Yes.
Okay,
I like that. That's a good one. Can you kind of not go into depth, but kind of skim over what a charter school is and the difference between a charter school and a public school? And it's like so many schools now, Montessori's and Sarasaris.
So
serious?
Charter schools are public schools.
Radio.
Public dollars are used in order to fund charter schools. So that's the misconception. The difference is, for us, it depends on who is basically the manager, so to speak, of that particular school. So, like, Cleveland is an overseer of multiple charter schools, right?
So
because there are a lot.
I mean,
you're talking about funding. They're not a part of CMSD, but every charter school has to have an entity that oversees like what they do, whether it's just the legal side of like a lot of stuff,
right?
For instance, I don't
Columbus.
know all the.
I don't know.
But they need someone everybody needs someone to be accountable to.
Right.
That's probably the best way of describing it. And so there are multiple charter schools
you can't have
that
schools
go
out here just willy nilly.
Yeah.
So the difference is the management, so to speak, quote unquote.
And they don't fall under everything that CMSD does. That doesn't mean that charter school is going to do. Montessori has been around for forever. It's just a different way of educating.
Okay.
And charter schools have been around for a long time now, but they take some of the dollars that go there. I think the benefit, people want choice and people want what they think is better. And one thing that our CEO has stated was, we want people to make Cleveland their choice. I agree with that. Like, you should have choice, and we want you to make the choice to be with us. And I've seen that happen where people have left to go to charter schools thinking it's going to be greener pastures.
And it was like, bloop.
And, they'll be right back. And
Case in point, I put my son in a charter school for his kindergarten year, and he is now a part of CMSD.
Yeah.
Because
we think we know, right? We think we have a handle on it. And truthfully, I think all of us want to do what's in the best interest of our children.
Yes.
For me personally, my children go to a Catholic school. That was not the plan. I can remember being an assistant, like, there is no way, I would never. And the crazy thing is, when it was time to put my child in a full day pre-K program, because I'm a professional, they were like, well, you make too much money. You can't put your baby in here full day.
Wow.
But my baby needed full day care. And I had an opportunity to take, and I was willing to pay the tuition and put my baby in a pre-K program at their school, and fell in love and knew the benefit of stability and not moving, your children around a lot in education. And so she started, and we're still there because it became a community that I didn't think I wanted, but it became the right community for her and then for our family. So I do believe people should have choice. It doesn't mean I want to go teach in a different type of school because I sent my child there. It just worked for my children. That was what was in their best interest.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So that was an eye opener for me, and realizing, like, people aren't wrong for making a choice. Just what fits your family.
Right. No, absolutely.
So I firmly believe that.
Sure. And I wanted to also touch on an issue that's a hot button issue: bullying in schools.
And October is the national.
It is. National Bully
Prevention.
Prevention thing.
Aware
month. Thank you.
So, please ask your question. I'm sorry. I was about to start responding without even knowing what you were asking.
No. Well, I have a middle schooler, and most recently we haven't had a lot of issues with bullying until this particular school year, 6th grade. So it's shocking to me the things that go on, not behind the scenes, but just between the kids that teachers don't even know about because they're focused on content. They're focused on keeping a calm classroom. But in the hallways, in the lunchroom, things go in the bathroom, on the bus, things go on that I hear about, and I'm disturbed. And it comes down to, it really is like bullying in many different forms. I like to say bullying light, bullying heavy, but nonetheless, it's bullying, it's harassment, it's other kids projecting and picking on other kids for whatever reason. Most of the times it's something going on inside of them. That's what I tell my child. It's really not you. They're dealing with something and they're just throwing it up on you. Yeah. But so how does that play out in your school? Like, what are you seeing in your school? And when there are issues, how do you deal with them? And when they're dealt with successfully, like, what does that look like?
So I would say the biggest thing is making people aware that teasing is not bullying. Doesn't mean it's right. It just means that is not what bullying actually is. Bullying is about the pervasive, like it's constant attacks. Okay. And it makes a child feel uncomfortable even going to school. Like, that's a big part of what it is. So most times I will hear parents say, "Yo, my child's being bullied." It's like, wait, let's get down to the root of what's going on and what's actually happening. So we deal with all parts of that in a school setting. For us in Cleveland, we have now Not on Our Watch, which is an anti-bullying program to get kids involved and make sure they become people that are going to support other children as they go through a lot of these issues and concerns.
So basically, not just the bullier or the bully.
Yes.
Wait, what?
But the child is being a victim. They're actually a victim. So the victim bully is not just dealing with those two pieces of parts.
But the bystanders.
It's the good. Yes, that's the word. Right. The bystanders. Okay. So a part of it is making your children aware of like what's appropriate behavior, whether it's happening to you, but also if it's happening to someone else. And a big thing for us is not jumping to wanting to use violence as a method to resolve it, because that's a lot of my kids over the course of time is like, well, you keep messing with me, we're gonna fight. Yes. But fighting doesn't actually stop the behaviors necessarily. So how do you get to the root of what it is and help kids on both sides understand, like, we don't have to be friends, but that doesn't mean you have a right to bother another child just because you don't like them. We ain't got to be friends. That's okay. But you shouldn't bother another child. So I would say there's no hard, fast way that it's dealt with, but a big part of it is kids feeling comfortable enough to either tell an adult at school or at home so that we can start to deal with whatever those consequences may look like for the bully. Because a lot of times if you don't know, you can't do something about something you don't know. And I appreciate the fact that you noted that there are things that are going on that the teachers may not be aware of, not because you're not watching, not because you're not paying attention, but some of it is so sneaky,
and subtle.
Yes, that you don't even know it's even taking place. So you have to be aware.
Kids are smart, and they know how to move around adults. So
it's the hope that children have a trusted person at school, but also at home, so that you can really deal with it, because it's an everyday occurrence that that's happening in schools across the board. But I will say that most school districts have taken a hard stance once they know that it is taking place. There are certain procedures and protocols that we have to go through, because the information can even be reported to the state level if a child is bullying other children. So it is a big issue though, and it has grown, and I think the awareness of it has grown. When we were kids, it was people just are
kids
saying
kids
being kids, but it's not kids just being kids.
It's not at all.
When you were pushing people to feel uncomfortable in their skin, or even welcome in their own school, because every child has a right to be
alive. Like there's kids taking their own lives because they can't take it. They don't want to tell their mom. They don't want to tell the teacher, and they're taking their own life.
Yeah, it's scary
because
it really
they're tired
is
of being bullied. That's scary.
Between 1 in 4 and 1 in 3 U.S. students say they have been bullied at school. That doesn't make sense.
Wait, what they say?
I'm
where do
reading
you
from
read this from?
stopbullying.gov. So it's the government website regarding the bullying statistics. Between 1 in 4 and 1 in 3 U.S. students say they have been bullied at school. That does make sense.
So
It's a
anywhere
range.
between 25 to 33% of kids have felt like they were bullied at some point.
Yeah.
Okay.
And most
'cause
bullying
it's-
happens in middle school. I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you say that is? Is it that because of that age that it's a transitional period in life?
It is a huge transition period for kids. We read some statistics. We have to do work, and actually, second grade is when it really starts.
Second grade.
Second grade. So I would say that was jarring to me
Yeah.
before my baby got into second grade, and reading that information and just how do I show her that much more love during this transitional time.
Mhm.
But middle school, I would say kids are really trying to figure out like who they are. It's like right around the
Absolutely.
time, like you are right before puberty or you have gone into puberty, and who are you and what do I like and not like, and do I like boys, do I like girls, do I like, like all of these different
All of
things they're
that.
trying to figure out. So I think a part of it, and people want to fit in. That's a big time for kids that really want to fit in
Absolutely.
and make friends, and they start pulling away from family, wanting to be around their parents so much
Yep.
because they want to get more into these groups so they can feel like they fit in. It's all about fitting
Yeah.
in though, yeah. And you're right, and being accepted.
We have talked. Oh, go ahead.
I think it's. I was just saying. I also think it starts at home too, in a way.
Yes.
Like you were saying, Ariel, how can you prevent or assist the situation beforehand or during or whatever the case? How can you show more love? How can you express to your child, hey, you can talk to me, or you're beautiful, you're handsome, you look good, I love that the way you wear your, whatever. I think that helps,
It does.
as far as show them more love, and like, hey, and not enabling the child to be feeling scared or feeling weird or feeling like they don't belong.
Well, it
or
does start
not.
in the home, but the kids who don't get that, and then that goes back to they take it into the school, and the teacher has to deal with that,
Yeah.
and then the other kids have to deal with that, and they don't have like the outlet, or they don't feel comfortable enough, or there's no one that they feel comfortable enough to release that energy that they're carrying,
Yeah.
and so they pound it out on somebody else. Oops, sorry.
You
I
got
just
really
pounded
excited.
it out.
You just pounded it out. Man, this is. I mean, I'm really. I've actually learned a lot during
Yes.
this conversation that we're having.
Shockingly, learning
No.
from a principal.
Thank you.
Right.
Sure.
No, I've learned a lot.
Soon to be doctor.
Yes.
All right. Come on
Yes.
now.
Now,
That's-
I wanted to say real quick,
Mhm.
we've talked about a lot of heavy stuff concerning schools and technical stuff and business stuff. What are your top 3 joys and about what you do?
My top 3 joys. Honestly, being able to see my kids over time. Like, I am 36 years old. I've been an educator since I was 22. And so now when I'm in a community and I can be in different places and people are like, is that Miss Towns? That's my maiden name. Is that Miss Towns? Or did you teach here? And like seeing their growth over
Mhm.
time, like
Yeah.
that to me is magic. Being in an elementary school right now and just being able to provide that nurturing for them, that really does my heart good.
Yeah.
Like that although I'm in an authoritative role, that they still want to be around me.
Mhm.
Like that is really cool. Like we have kids that want to come and have lunch or just hang out,
Yeah.
or
Aw.
that to me brings joy, because although sometimes people think in this role you have to be hard and firm and mean, like that's not my go-to. I don't want to be their enemy. I want to love them where they are and help them grow.
Mhm.
And I would say lastly, the joy is working with a dynamic team. Like
Okay.
having
Yeah,
a
you
great
do
team
have
to
a
work
great-
with makes a huge difference, and that's from all facets. Like my secretary is amazing, my security officer,
Right.
just all of these, my teachers,
Mhm.
all these other people, the custodian, the lunch people, all these different people play such a big role in shaping the lives of children. So to
Mhm.
be able to work with a dynamic team every single day, that does bring me joy, because I enjoy going to work. And as much as I love my scholars, I love my team because they make it where I want to go to work. And when you work with cool people, it makes you like, let's get up. All right, we got stuff to do today, but we're going to laugh and joke too. And it makes for a great environment.
Another thing I noticed, you refer to your students as scholars. Why is that? And what difference does it make?
So when I first came to Cleveland, our CAO at the time, that was a big to-do that came from her.
Now, what's CAO?
Her name was Dr. Pierre Farid.
I mean, what does CAO
Oh, I
mean?
apologize. The Chief Academic Officer.
Okay.
So she's over all of the schools. And that was one of the things when I
knew that.
started that, we call our students scholars. And it just puts a completely different vibe on a learner when you call them a scholar instead of just a student. It just says a lot. And over time, I bought into it and realized it made a huge difference.
Yeah, okay.
Like, I agree. You all are scholars, and that's the level, the expectation I have for you that you are a scholar. And so that's where it came from. But it was one of those things that I was like, I buy into this. I believe this. And so, get my baby to move my mic. I buy into this and I believe it. So that
Shout
made
out to the baby.
a huge difference.
We believe
when
the
I heard
children are future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they
don't know words.
possess.
They don't know
Especially
words.
she don't
Yeah,
know it.
Asia's
No,
really
Because you know
couldn't
what?
know the
We
words.
sang that at my preschool graduation.
Well, I sang I Believe I Can Fly. I believe
No,
I
we
can
don't
fly.
condone R. Kelly
Oh, no.
on this podcast.
No, it was a... You're right.
It really caught her.
It was... No, that ain't good.
No.
I kind of went in right there.
You did.
No,
It's
but
okay.
that I'm just super excited. I'm like I always say, because I be excited. But.
Okay.
Yeah.
So really quick, as we're wrapping up, because this has been absolutely amazing.
Yes.
What are your 3 principles of being a good principal?
Y'all hear that? That play on words? Give it up for Asia. Woo!
So I think the 3 principles are to show care, whether that's care for others, self-care. That's a huge one. The second one is buy-in. You cannot lead if the people that you have behind you or beside you don't believe in what you're doing. So have buy-in. And lastly, continue to dream. I think that dreams are important across the board from the scholars, their families, the teaching staff, myself, and everyone else included. So buy into people's dreams and know that people are passionate about things within the school setting, but also outside of it, and encourage that, promote that, and make sure people know that you understand the importance.
Yeah, that's dope. Well, thank you so much for coming. We had a great time. This has been the Culture Podcast. Everybody, make sure you keep dreaming. Make sure you follow, drop a comment, a rating, all of the above. Peace and blessings, y'all.
The culture, for my people, I'm choosing. I'm moving, we never losing.